My name is Rellin, and 3 months ago I thought I knew exactly how my life worked. I was wrong about everything. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams when they fired me. Marlo Trasker, VP of Operations, sat across from me with that practiced corporate smile, the kind they teach you in management seminars right after How to Crush Employee Morale Without Getting Sued. "Hayes, we're restructuring the IT department," Marlo said, sliding a folder across the polished table. "Your position has been eliminated." 39 years old, 15 years with the company, and they eliminated me like a line item on a budget spreadsheet. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built half the systems that would probably replace me. "Effective immediately?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm afraid so. Security will escort you out after you sign these papers." That's when I noticed Kalia wasn't looking at me. My wife of 12 years, the woman who'd promised to support me through thick and thin, was studying her fingernails like they held the secrets of the universe. As HR manager, she had to be in the room for terminations. Professional protocol. But she could have at least pretended to care. "Any questions?" Marlo asked. "Just one. When did you start wearing cufflinks?" He glanced down at his wrists, confused. "These? They're new. Why?" "No reason." But there was a reason. I'd found one exactly like it under my couch cushions 2 days earlier. Sterling silver with the company logo. At the time, I'd assumed it fell out of my own shirt. Now, watching Marlo fidget with his sleeves, I realized how stupid that assumption had been. The security guard walked me to my cubicle like I was some kind of criminal. 15 years of work life fit into one cardboard box. Family photos, a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Employee," and a small cactus Kalia had given me for our anniversary. The cactus was the only thing still alive. "Sorry about this, Hayes," the guard said. His name was Pete, and we'd talked about baseball dozens of times. "You're a good guy." "Thanks, Pete. Take care of yourself." The parking lot felt like a wasteland. My Honda Civic looked pathetic next to all the SUVs and luxury sedans. I sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Kalia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the text. No sorry about today. No, we'll figure this out together. Just a casual dismissal, like I was some roommate she barely tolerated. The drive home took 20 minutes. Our house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in suburbia, looked smaller somehow. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. The car payment the week after that. My severance would cover maybe 2 months if we were careful. I found the iPad on the kitchen counter, still logged into Kalia's personal account. She'd always been careless with technology, which was ironic considering she'd married an IT guy. Her text messages were right there, and I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times make you do desperate things. The conversation with someone named M made my stomach turn. M. How did he take it? Kalia. Like a kicked dog. Pathetic. M. You did the right thing. He was holding you back. Kalia. I know. I just can't wait to stop pretending anymore. M. Soon. My divorce will be final next month. Kalia. I'd trade Hayes for anyone with a real paycheck. This house, this life, I'm suffocating. M. You won't have to much longer, trust me. I set the iPad down carefully, like it might explode. My hands were shaking. 15 years of marriage, and she'd been planning my replacement like a corporate merger. The smart thing would have been to confront her immediately, demand answers, fight for our marriage. But something cold and calculating had settled in my chest. Instead, I poured myself a beer and started thinking. Devin showed up around 8, like he always did when things went wrong. My best friend since college had a sixth sense for trouble. Ex-cop, current private investigator, and the only person who'd never lied to me. Heard about the job, he said, helping himself to a beer from my fridge. Rough break? How'd you find out so fast? Ray told me. He heard it from some woman at his bar, Tanya something. Tanya was one of Kalia's friends, the kind who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. If she was already spreading the news, half the city probably knew I'd been fired. What exactly did she say? Devin shifted uncomfortably. You sure you want to know? Tell me. She said Kalia was finally upgrading to someone with real money. Said she'd been planning it for months. The beer tasted like ash. What else? Hayes, maybe we should… What else, Devin? He sighed. She said Kalia and some VP have been meeting at the Marriott downtown, Tuesday afternoons. Said they've got big plans once his divorce goes through. Tuesday afternoons. When Kalia claimed she had extended lunch meetings with other department heads. The lies were so obvious now, I felt stupid for missing them. There's more, Devin said quietly. Tanya was laughing about how you had no idea. Said Kalia told her you were too boring to notice anything interesting. That hurt worse than the firing. I'd spent 15 years trying to be a good husband, and she'd been mocking me behind my back the entire time. You okay? Devin asked. I'm fine. No, you're not. I know that look. You're planning something. He was right. The wheels were already turning, but before I could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Rellin, this is Patricia Hendricks from Hendricks, Walsh & Associates. I'm calling about your Uncle Robert's estate. Uncle Robert. My father's brother, who'd moved to Montana 20 years ago and never looked back. We'd exchanged Christmas cards, nothing more. I'm sorry, but Uncle Robert passed away last month. You were listed as his sole beneficiary. That's impossible. We barely spoke. Nevertheless, sir, you've inherited his entire estate. Could you come to our office tomorrow to discuss the details? After I hung up, Devin was staring at me. What was that about? Apparently, I just inherited something from my uncle. The one who disappeared to Montana? That's the one. Devin grinned. Well, looks like your luck might be changing. I thought about Kalia's text messages, about Marlowe's smug face, about Tanya laughing at my expense. You know what, Devin? I think you might be right. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The law office was downtown, in one of those glass towers that made you feel small just walking through the lobby. Patricia Hendricks was a sharp-dressed woman in her 50s who looked like she could negotiate peace treaties before lunch. Your uncle was quite successful, she said, sliding documents across her desk. He started with a small mining operation and expanded into real estate development. Very smart investments. The numbers on the papers didn't make sense at first. Too many zeros. I had to read them twice. This says $3.7 million. That's correct. Plus the properties in Montana, Colorado, and here in the city. Here? In the city? She pulled out another folder. He owned several commercial properties through shell companies, a warehouse district, 2 office buildings, and an apartment complex. My brain was spinning. The warehouse district on 5th Street? You know it? I knew it because Marlowe's department had their main storage facility there. The lease renewal had been a big deal 6 months ago. Marlowe had bragged about negotiating a 5-year contract at below-market rates. Ms. Hendricks, I need to ask you something important. When exactly did my uncle pass away? March 15th. 2 weeks after Kalia had asked for a separation. A month before she'd started her Tuesday afternoon meetings with Marlowe. And when does this inheritance become official? As soon as you sign these papers. Everything transfers to your name immediately. I signed everything. Then I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the warehouse district across the street. Trucks were loading and unloading at the facility Marlowe's company used. His entire operation depended on that location. My phone buzzed. Text from Kalia. Need to talk tonight. Important. I deleted the message without responding. Instead, I called Devin. Remember that favor you owe me from college? The one where you didn't tell my girlfriend about the stripper at your bachelor party? Yeah, I remember. I need you to dig up everything you can on Marlo Trasker. Financial records, personal life, business dealings, everything. This about revenge? This is about justice. Same thing, different word. I'm in. Next, I called Patricia Hendricks back. I need to hire your firm for some additional legal work. What kind of work? The kind that requires absolute discretion. That afternoon, I drove to the Marriott downtown. Tuesday afternoon, just like Tanya had said. I didn't have to wait long. Marlo's BMW pulled into the parking garage at 1:30, followed 5 minutes later by Kalia's Toyota. I stayed in my car and watched them meet at the elevator. Kalia was wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. The one she'd claimed was too fancy for anywhere we'd go. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. The way she touched his arm. The way he looked at her like she was some kind of prize he'd won. The way they disappeared into the elevator together, probably heading to a room he'd paid for with company money. My phone rang. Devin. Got some interesting information about your friend Marlo. Such as? He's not as successful as he pretends. Maxed out on credit cards, behind on his mortgage, and his ex-wife is taking him for everything in the divorce. That VP salary looks good on paper, but he's been living beyond his means for years. What else? He's got a gambling problem. Poker games, sports betting, even some casino debt. The kind of debt that makes people desperate. Suddenly, Marlo's interest in Kalia made more sense. She wasn't just an affair. She was a financial lifeline. Her HR salary, combined with whatever she thought she'd get from divorcing me, probably looked like salvation to a man drowning in debt. There's more, Devin continued. Remember that data breach your company had 6 months ago? The one where someone accessed confidential employee files? Yeah, they never caught who did it. Want to guess whose access codes were used? Marlo's? Bingo. But here's the interesting part. The breach happened after hours, from a computer in the HR department. Kalia's computer. She'd helped him steal employee data, probably to identify which workers could be safely eliminated. Like me. Devin, I need you to do something else. Can you find out who owns the shell companies that control the warehouse leases? Already on it. Give me 2 hours. I spent those 2 hours driving around the city, thinking. By the time Devin called back, I had a plan. Good news, he said. Your uncle's shell companies own about 60% of the warehouse district, including the building Marlo's company uses. And the lease terms? Month to month, with a renewal option that expires next week. Perfect. That evening, Kalia came home late, claiming she'd been stuck in traffic. She looked guilty and nervous, like a teenager who'd missed curfew. We need to talk, she said. About what? About us. About our future. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd planned vacations and discussed dreams that would never come true. Hayes, I think we both know this isn't working anymore. What isn't working? Our marriage. We've grown apart. We want different things. Such as? I want stability, security, a partner who can provide for our future. And I can't provide that? She looked away. You just got fired, Hayes. We're going to lose the house. I can't live like this anymore. Like what? Like we're poor. The word hung in the air between us. Poor. As if 15 years of marriage could be reduced to a bank account balance. So what are you suggesting? I think we should separate. Officially, I've already talked to a lawyer. Of course she had. Probably the same day I got fired. And where will you go? I have options. Such as Marlo Trasker? Her face went white. For a moment she looked like she might deny it. Then something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe, that she didn't have to pretend anymore. Yes, Marlo and I are together. We have been for months. How many months? Does it matter? It matters to me. She sighed. Since January. 4 months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks, trying to keep my job, she'd been planning my replacement. I'm sorry you found out this way, she said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. But it's better for everyone. You'll find someone more suitable. Someone poor enough for me, you mean? That's not what I said. It's what you meant. She stood up. I'm staying at Marlowe's tonight. We can discuss the details later. After she left, I sat in the empty house and smiled for the first time in weeks. Kalia had just made a huge mistake. She'd assumed I was the same powerless man who'd been fired 3 days ago. She had no idea what was coming. I called Patricia Hendricks. Ms. Hendricks, I want to terminate the lease on the 5th Street warehouse, effective immediately. That's your right as the owner. Any particular reason? Safety violations. The building needs extensive renovations before it can be occupied again. I'll have the notices delivered tomorrow morning. Next, I called a commercial real estate agent. I need to rent warehouse space, something large enough for a major distribution operation, and I need it by next week. That's short notice, Mr. Rellin. Money is no object. In that case, I'll see what I can find. Finally, I called Devon. How do you feel about doing some undercover work? What kind of undercover work? The kind that involves a fake identity and a lot of cash. My favorite kind. What do you need? I need you to become Marlowe Trasker's new best friend. The warehouse evacuation happened on a Wednesday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but Devon described it in vivid detail over coffee. Pure chaos, he said, grinning. 48 hours to relocate an entire distribution center. Marlowe was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, screaming at everyone. What about the new space? Funny thing about that, the only available warehouse that could handle their volume was owned by another one of your uncle's shell companies. Triple the rent, month-to-month lease only. And they took it? What choice did they have? Marlowe signed the papers himself. Didn't even read the fine print. The fine print was beautiful. Automatic rent increases every 90 days, no subleasing allowed. Termination clause that could be triggered for any reason with 72 hours notice. There's more, Devon continued. I've been hanging around the poker games Marlowe frequents. Guy's desperate. He borrowed $50,000 from some very unfriendly people to cover his gambling debts. How unfriendly? The kind who break kneecaps for late payments. That explained why Marlowe was pushing so hard for a quick resolution with Kalia. He needed her assets to stay afloat. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Kalia's lawyer. We need to schedule a meeting regarding spousal support and asset division. I forwarded the message to Patricia Hendricks, then deleted it. What's the next move? Devon asked. We wait. Let them make the first real mistake. The mistake came sooner than expected. That afternoon, Patricia called with interesting news. Mr. Rellin, we've received a rather aggressive demand from your wife's attorney. They're claiming you've hidden assets and demanding full financial disclosure. On what basis? They seem to believe you've come into money recently. They're threatening to involve the court if you don't comply. How could they possibly know about the inheritance? That's an excellent question. The estate was handled with complete discretion, unless someone has been monitoring your financial accounts. Someone like an HR manager with access to employee records. Someone who might have noticed unusual activity in my bank accounts. What do they want specifically? Complete financial records for the past year, including any recent inheritances, gifts, or business transactions. They're also demanding temporary spousal support of $4,000 per month. $4,000. More than my old salary after taxes. Ms. Hendricks, I have a question about the inheritance. When exactly did it become legally mine? The moment your uncle passed away in March. The probate process was just a formality. So legally I owned those assets before my wife filed for separation? That's correct. And assets acquired during marriage are generally considered joint property, correct? In this state, yes, unless they're inherited by one spouse specifically. Perfect. Kalia's lawyer had just walked into a trap. Set up the meeting, I told Patricia. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize what they're really asking for. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I spent the intervening days making preparations. Devon's undercover work at the poker games was paying dividends. Marlowe was getting desperate, borrowing more money he couldn't repay. Thursday evening, Kalia showed up at the house to collect more of her belongings. She looked different. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, professional makeup. Marlowe was clearly spending money he didn't have to maintain her new lifestyle. "You look nice," I said. "Thank you." She seemed surprised by the compliment. "New dress?" "Marlowe bought it for me." Generous of him. She studied my face, looking for sarcasm or anger, but I'd spent the week practicing my poker face. "Hayes, I know this is difficult, but I hope we can handle this divorce civilly." "Of course. We're both adults." "Good. My lawyer says you've been cooperative about the financial disclosure. I have nothing to hide." That was technically true. I had nothing to hide because everything was perfectly legal. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this," she said. "I was worried you might try to make things difficult." "Why would I do that?" "I don't know. Some men get vindictive when their wives leave them. I'm not some men." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. "That's one of the things I always liked about you, Hayes. You're predictable." After she left, I called Patricia Hendricks. "Change of plans for tomorrow's meeting. I want to make a counteroffer." "What kind of counteroffer?" "The kind that will end this divorce very quickly." Friday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly. The law office conference room felt like a battlefield, with Patricia and me on one side, Kalia and her lawyer on the other. Marlowe was there too, supposedly for moral support, but probably to make sure Kalia didn't back down. Kalia's lawyer was a thin man named Stevens, who looked like he'd been sucking lemons. "Mr. Rellin, my client is entitled to half of all marital assets. We have reason to believe you've recently acquired significant wealth." "You're absolutely right," I said. Stevens blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You're right. I did recently acquire significant wealth." Kalia was staring at me. This wasn't going the way she'd expected. Patricia slid a folder across the table. "Complete financial disclosure, as requested. Mr. Rellin inherited $3.7 million plus various properties from his uncle in March." Stevens opened the folder. His eyes widened. "This is substantial." "Indeed," Patricia said. "Which brings us to our counteroffer." "Counteroffer?" Kalia asked. "Under state law, inherited assets become joint property if acquired during marriage. Mr. Rellin inherited these assets in March, while you were still married." I watched the greed bloom in Kalia's eyes. Nearly $2 million, plus half the property value. More money than she'd ever dreamed of. "However," Patricia continued, "Mr. Rellin is willing to waive his claim to half of your assets in exchange for a quick, amicable divorce." "What assets?" Stevens asked. Patricia slid another folder across the table. "Mrs. Rellin's assets. Her 401k, her car, her jewelry, and of course her share of the warehouse properties." "What warehouse properties?" "The ones Mr. Rellin inherited, including the facility where Mr. Trasker's company currently operates." Marlowe went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Didn't you know?" I asked. "My uncle owned most of the warehouse district, including your new location." The room went silent. I could see the wheels turning in everyone's heads. "So, here's the deal," I continued. "Kalia gets half of everything, as she's legally entitled to. That includes half ownership of Marlowe's lease agreements." Stevens was frantically scribbling notes. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Simple. We split everything 50-50 and go our separate ways. No spousal support, no ongoing obligations. Clean break. That seems fair, Kalia said quickly. But Marlowe was shaking his head. Kalia, think about this. If you own half his properties, you'd be his business partner. Do you really want that kind of ongoing relationship? Smart man. He'd figured out the trap. What do you mean? Kalia asked. I mean, Marlowe said slowly, that Hayes would have a say in all your business decisions. Rent increases, lease renewals, tenant selection, everything. Patricia smiled. That's correct. Joint ownership means joint decision-making authority. Unless, I added, Kalia would prefer to buy out my share. I'd accept fair market value. Stevens did some quick math. That would be approximately $1.8 million. Money Kalia didn't have. Money Marlowe definitely didn't have. There is a third option, Patricia said. Mrs. Rellin could sell her share to a third party. Who would want to buy half ownership of warehouse properties? Stevens asked. I smiled. I can think of several commercial real estate companies that would be very interested. The truth was, I'd already arranged for a shell company to make an offer. 50 cents on the dollar, take it or leave it. Kalia would walk away with less than $1 million, and I'd maintain control of the properties. I need time to think about this, Kalia said. Of course. Take all the time you need. After they left, Patricia poured herself a scotch from the bar in her office. That was masterfully done, she said. Think they'll take the bait? Oh, they'll take it. The question is which option they'll choose. Does it matter? Not to you. Either way, you win. That evening, Devon called with an update from the poker games. Marlowe's in full panic mode. He's trying to borrow more money, but word's gotten out about his situation. Nobody wants to lend to a guy who might lose his job. How much does he owe now? North of $200,000, counting the loan sharks. And his company salary? $120,000 a year before taxes. The math was simple. Even if Marlowe kept his job, he'd never dig out of that hole. His only hope was Kalia's divorce settlement, and I'd just made that a lot more complicated. There's something else, Devon said. One of the guys at the poker game works in corporate compliance. Says there's been an investigation into the data breach. What kind of investigation? The kind that involves the FBI. That was interesting. If the feds were involved, someone had been using stolen employee data for more than just firing decisions. Any idea what they found? Not yet, but my guy says they're close to making arrests. I hung up and poured myself a beer. Outside, it was starting to rain harder. Perfect weather for what was coming next. The call came at 6 a.m. on Monday morning. Patricia Hendricks sounded wide awake, which meant she'd been up all night working. They took the bait, she said. Stevens called an hour ago. They want to accept your offer and split everything 50-50. All of it? All of it. Assets, properties, business interests, joint ownership across the board. I smiled into the phone. When do we sign? This afternoon. But Hayes, are you sure about this? You're giving up a lot of money. I'm investing in something more valuable than money. Which is? Justice. The signing took place in the same conference room where we'd met on Friday. Kalia looked excited, like a kid on Christmas morning. Marlowe looked like he was attending his own funeral. Before we proceed, Stevens said, I want to make sure everyone understands the implications of joint ownership. We understand, Kalia said quickly. Mrs. Rellin, this means you and your ex-husband will be business partners. All major decisions require mutual consent. Rent increases, lease modifications, property sales. Everything needs both signatures. That's fine, she said. We can be professional about this. I signed the papers without reading them. I'd already read them a dozen times. Congratulations, Patricia said. You're now equal partners in a very successful real estate portfolio. After everyone left, I sat alone in the conference room and made a phone call. Devin, it's time for phase 2. What do you need? I need you to schedule a partners meeting for tomorrow morning. Tell Kalia we need to discuss some urgent business matters. What kind of business matters? The kind that involve immediate rent increases across all properties. The partners meeting was held in Patricia's conference room. Kalia showed up in another new outfit, looking confident and businesslike. She'd brought Marlo for support, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. Thank you for coming, I said. We have several pressing matters to discuss. I slid a folder across the table. First item, the warehouse lease renewals. All of our current leases expire at the end of this month. Kalia opened the folder. These are our tenants? That's right, including Marlo's company. Marlo shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I'm proposing we double the rent across all properties, I continued. Market analysis shows we're significantly undercharging. Double? Kalia asked. Commercial real estate in this area has appreciated dramatically. We're leaving money on the table. But that would put some tenants out of business. That's not our problem. We're not running a charity. I watched Marlo's face turn pale. His company was already struggling with the increased costs from their warehouse relocation. Doubling the rent would finish them. I don't know, Kalia said. It seems harsh. It's business, Kalia. I thought you understood that. She looked at Marlo, who was staring at the table. What if some tenants can't afford the increase? She asked. Then we find new tenants who can. The demand for warehouse space is very high right now. I need to think about this. Unfortunately, we don't have time to think. The lease renewals need to be signed by Friday, or we lose the tenants entirely. Can't we extend the current leases? Not without both partners' consent, and I'm not consenting to below-market rates. Kalia was trapped. She could either agree to the rent increases, which would destroy Marlo's company, or refuse and risk losing all the rental income. What do you recommend? She asked. I recommend we act like business people instead of bleeding hearts. Fine, but I want to review each lease individually. Of course, we'll meet again tomorrow to go through them one by one. After they left, Patricia joined me in the conference room. You're enjoying this, she said. Shouldn't I be? Most people would just take the money and move on. Most people aren't married to someone who called them pathetic. The next morning's meeting was even better. Kalia had obviously spent the night arguing with Marlo about the rent increases. She looked tired and stressed. I've reviewed the leases, she said. Some of these increases seem excessive. Which ones? Well, for example, Marlo's company is currently paying $8,000 a month. You want to increase it to $16,000. That's correct. But they just signed a new lease 3 months ago. A month-to-month lease with no rate protection. Perfectly legal. It would put them out of business. Again, not our problem. Marlo finally spoke up. Hayes, can't we work something out? Some kind of payment plan? This is a business meeting, Marlo. Partners don't negotiate with tenants' boyfriends. His face turned red. I'm not just her boyfriend. We're engaged. That was news to me. And apparently to Kalia, based on her shocked expression. Congratulations, I said. When's the wedding? We haven't set a date yet, Kalia said quickly. Well, whenever it is, I hope you can afford a nice reception, because these rent increases are non-negotiable. The meeting went on for 2 hours. Lease by lease, property by property, I forced Kalia to choose between her business interests and her personal relationships. Every decision was a knife twist. By the end, she looked exhausted. I need a break, she said. Take all the time you need, but remember the leases expire Friday. That evening, Devin called with an update. The FBI investigation is heating up. They've identified the source of the data breach. And? Multiple violations of federal privacy laws. Someone's been selling employee personal information to identity thieves. Someone like Marlo? That would be my guess. The compliance guy says they're preparing arrest warrants. When? Soon, maybe this week. Perfect timing. Just as Marlowe's financial world was collapsing, his legal world was about to follow suit. "There's something else," Devon continued. "Remember Tanya, the one who was gossiping about Kalia? What about her?" "She's been talking to a reporter. Local paper is working on a story about corporate executives and their personal lives." "What kind of story?" "The kind that involves affairs, data breaches, and financial impropriety." I smiled. The dominoes were falling exactly as planned. "Devon, I need you to do one more thing." "What's that?" "Find out where Kalia and Marlowe are living. I want to send them a housewarming gift." The gift was a fruit basket with a note. "Congratulations on your engagement. Hope you're enjoying your new life together. Your business partner." I had it delivered to Marlowe's apartment on Thursday evening, just as they were probably discussing the lease crisis. Friday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather. Perfect for the final act. The lease signing meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Kalia arrived alone, looking defeated. "Where's Marlowe?" I asked. "He's dealing with some legal issues." "Nothing serious, I hope?" She stared at me. "You know exactly what's happening, don't you?" "I know a lot of things, Kalia. You'll have to be more specific." "The FBI arrested Marlowe this morning. Data theft, identity fraud, conspiracy." "That's terrible news. I hope he has a good lawyer." "This is all connected, isn't it? The inheritance, the properties, the rent increases. You planned all of this." "I didn't plan anything, Kalia. I just made good business decisions." "You destroyed his company. Market forces destroyed his company. I just owned the real estate." She was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want, Hayes?" "I want you to sign these lease renewals." "And if I don't?" "Then our tenants find new locations, we lose all our rental income, and you're stuck owning half of some very expensive empty buildings." She signed the papers without reading them. "There's one more thing," I said after she finished. "What?" "I'm buying out your share of the partnership." "You can't do that without my consent." "Actually, I can. It's in the partnership agreement you signed on Monday. Either partner can force a buyout if the other partner becomes a legal liability." "What legal liability?" "Marlowe's arrest makes you a person of interest in the FBI investigation. That makes you a liability to our business interests." Patricia slid another folder across the table. "Buyout offer. Fair market value, as determined by an independent appraiser." Kalia opened the folder. The number was exactly half what she'd expected. "This is barely $1 million. "Property values fluctuate," I said, "especially when there's negative publicity involved." "What negative publicity?" I showed her my phone. The local newspaper's website had a front-page story. "Local executive arrested in data theft scheme." Marlowe's mugshot was prominently featured, along with details about his gambling debts and affair with a married co-worker. The reporter was very thorough, I said. Amazing what people will tell journalists when they think they're helping friends. Kalia's face went white as she read the article. Her name was mentioned several times, along with unflattering details about her role in the data breach and her affair with Marlowe. "Tanya talked to them," she whispered. "Among others. Apparently your friends weren't as loyal as you thought." She looked up at me with something like hatred. "You orchestrated all of this." "I just gave people the opportunity to show their true colors. You, Marlowe, Tanya, everyone made their own choices. And now you're taking everything." "I'm taking what's mine, what was always mine." She signed the buyout agreement with shaking hands. "One last question," I said, as she prepared to leave. "Was any of it real? Our marriage, I mean." She was quiet for a long moment. "It was real until it wasn't." "When did it stop being real?" "When I realized you were never going to be more than what you were." "And what was I?" "Safe, boring, predictable." She left without saying goodbye. I sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by signed documents that made me sole owner of a multi-million-dollar real estate empire. Outside, the sun was shining, Patricia returned with a bottle of champagne. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like justice." "And Kalia?" "Kalia gets to start over with nothing, just like she wanted me to do." "What about Marlo?" "Marlo gets to learn that actions have consequences." We drank champagne and watched the sun set over the city. Somewhere out there, Kalia was probably trying to figure out how to rebuild her life with $1 million and a ruined reputation. Marlo was sitting in a jail cell, waiting for his lawyer to explain how federal data theft charges worked. And I was exactly where I belonged, on top. 3 weeks later, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my new office when Devon called with interesting news. "Your ex-wife and her boyfriend are planning something," he said. "What kind of something?" "The kind that involves meeting at the old warehouse tonight, the one where this all started." "How do you know?" "I've been keeping tabs on them since Marlo made bail. They've been desperate, trying to find some way to get back at you. And they think meeting at my warehouse is a good idea? Apparently, Kalia believes you've been monitoring their communications. She suggested somewhere private, where they could talk freely." I looked out my office window at the warehouse district below. The building in question was empty now. I'd decided not to re-lease it after Marlo's company folded. "What time?" 9 p.m. "You want me to call the police?" "Not yet. Let's see what they're planning first." "Hayes, these people have nothing left to lose. That makes them dangerous." "I'll be careful." At 8:30, I drove to the warehouse district. The area was mostly deserted after business hours, just a few security lights casting long shadows between the buildings. I parked across the street and waited. Kalia arrived first, driving a beat-up Honda that had seen better days. The luxury lifestyle was apparently over. Marlo showed up 10 minutes later in a taxi. His BMW had been repossessed the week before. I watched them enter the building through a side door that should have been locked. Someone had cut the chain on the fence and jimmied the door. Breaking and entering, technically, though I wasn't planning to press charges. I waited another 5 minutes, then followed them inside. The warehouse was dark except for a few emergency lights. My footsteps echoed in the empty space as I made my way toward voices coming from the old office area. "Has to be some way to prove he planned all this," Kalia was saying. "Even if we could prove it, so what?" Marlo replied. "Everything he did was legal." "There has to be something, some mistake he made." "The only mistake was trusting you in the first place." That was harsh, even for Marlo. "Don't blame me for this," Kalia shot back. "You're the one who got arrested. Because you gave me access to the HR systems. You said you needed employee data for legitimate business purposes. And you believed me because you wanted to believe me, just like you wanted to believe I was going to leave my wife for you." There was a long silence. "You were never going to leave her, were you?" Kalia asked quietly. "Leave her for what? A middle management HR drone with a mortgage she can't afford?" Another silence, longer this time. "So what was I to you?" Kalia asked. "A convenience, a way to get information and access I needed for the identity theft operation. You used me. We used each other. You wanted out of your boring marriage, I needed inside information. It was mutually beneficial until your husband turned out to be smarter than either of us realized. I decided it was time to make my entrance. Actually," I said, stepping into the office area, "I'm not that smart. You two just made it easy." They spun around, startled. Kalia looked like she'd seen a ghost. Marlo looked like he was calculating the distance to the exit. "Hayes," Kalia said, "what are you doing here?" "It's my building. The question is what you're doing here." We needed somewhere private to talk. "About what?" Marlo stepped forward. "About making a deal." "What kind of deal?" "You drop the civil lawsuit against me, and I'll make sure Kalia gets some of her money back." I laughed. "What money, and what lawsuit?" "Don't play dumb, Hayes. You're suing me for damages related to the data breach." "Actually, I'm not. My insurance company is suing you. I have nothing to do with it." But you could make them stop. Why would I want to do that? Marlowe's composure cracked. Because if you don't, I'll tell everyone how you manipulated this whole situation, how you used your inheritance to destroy people's lives. Go ahead. Tell them. You don't care about your reputation? My reputation is that of a successful businessman who made smart investments. Your reputation is that of a federal criminal who stole employee data to fund his gambling addiction. Kalia had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Hayes, I know you hate me. I know you think I deserve everything that's happened, but we were married for 15 years. That has to count for something. It counted for something when you were my wife. It stopped counting when you decided I wasn't good enough for you. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Can't you forgive me? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still attractive, but the confidence was gone. The arrogance had been replaced by desperation. Kalia, do you remember what you said to me the night you moved out? I said a lot of things. You said I was predictable, that I'd never be more than what I was. I was angry. No, you were honest, for maybe the first time in our marriage. So what happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices, both of you. Marlowe had been edging toward the exit during our conversation. Now he made his move, heading for the door at a fast walk. Where are you going, Marlowe? He stopped. This conversation is over. Actually, it's just getting started. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Their voices filled the empty warehouse, crystal clear. Marlowe admitting to using Kalia for inside information, Kalia acknowledging her role in the data breach, both of them discussing their affair and their plan to leave me with nothing. You recorded us, Kalia said. The building has a security system. Very sophisticated. Records everything. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. You're trespassing on private property. I have every right to monitor my own buildings. Marlowe was looking around frantically, probably searching for the cameras. What do you want, Hayes? I want you to understand something, Marlowe. You called me predictable. You thought you knew exactly how I'd react to being betrayed. So? So you were wrong. The Hayes you knew, the one who would have just accepted his fate and moved on, that person doesn't exist anymore. What are you saying? I'm saying that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing left to lose. And thanks to you two, I lost everything that mattered to me. You got revenge, Kalia said. You won. I got justice. There's a difference. What's the difference? Revenge is personal. Justice is permanent. I walked over to a wall panel and flipped a switch. Suddenly, the warehouse was flooded with light. Security cameras were visible in every corner, red recording lights blinking. Smile, I said. You're on camera. You can't use this recording, Marlowe said. It would never hold up in court. Who said anything about court? I was thinking more along the lines of social media. YouTube, maybe. Facebook, Twitter. Amazing how fast things go viral these days. Both of them went pale. You wouldn't, Kalia whispered. Try me. Hayes, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. Do what? Share the truth? Let people see who you really are? It would ruin me. You ruined yourself, Kalia. I just documented it. Marlowe was backing toward the exit again. This is extortion. No, this is consequences. You both seem to have trouble understanding the concept. What do you want from us? I want you to disappear. Leave town. Start over somewhere else. Stop trying to blame me for the mess you made of your own lives. And if we don't, then this recording becomes very public, very quickly. They looked at each other, then back at me. How do we know you won't release it anyway? Kalia asked. You don't. You'll just have to trust me. Trust you? After everything you've done to us? Everything I've done to you was legal, ethical, and justified. Everything you did to me was dishonest, manipulative, and cruel. If you can't see the difference, that's your problem. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of the security system and the distant sound of traffic. "One more thing," I said. "Marlowe, your trial starts next month. I'd recommend taking whatever plea deal they offer. Federal prison is not kind to white-collar criminals." "How would you know?" "I've done my research. Amazing what you can learn when you have time and money. And Kalia? Kalia gets to start over with $1 million and a hard-earned lesson about loyalty." I walked toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, and Kalia? Next time you decide someone isn't good enough for you, make sure you're right." I left them standing in the empty warehouse, surrounded by cameras and consequences. Outside, it was starting to rain again. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Text message from an unknown number. Well played. I deleted it without responding and drove home to my new house, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, nothing flashy or pretentious. I'd learned something important over the past few months. Revenge might be satisfying, but peace of mind was better. 3 months later, I read in the newspaper that Marlowe had been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Kalia had moved to another state, according to Devon's sources. The warehouse district was thriving under new management. And me? I was exactly where I wanted to be. Free, financially secure, and finally able to sleep through the night without wondering who was betraying me. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. But sometimes, when people push you too far, the best revenge is making sure they understand exactly what they've lost. I never saw either of them again.